Hi class, Mr. Clark here. Today we're going to be working on our acrylic painting techniques. The very first thing that we're going to do is put our name on our worksheet with pencil. And then set our pencil aside because we won't be needing that anymore. The things that you're going to need to complete this assignment is you're going to need your red, yellow, and blue acrylic paint. You're going to need some paintbrushes, of course. You're going to also want your palette knife for mixing our paint with, our palette for mixing our paint in, a cup of water about half full for cleaning out our paintbrushes, and then your paper towel for drying them off. You're also going to want to make sure that you put newspaper down behind your worksheet so that you can keep our tables nice and clean. The very first thing that this worksheet asks us to do is just to paint our primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. So all you're going to do, you can paint them directly from the color cups. Just dip a little bit of our paint in here and just paint it directly on the circles. Trying to make sure I stay inside my circle lines, keep our paint nice and even, while also smoothing it out so that we don't have any of those bumps or clumps of paint either. All right, now that yellow is done, I have to make sure to clean off my paintbrush so that I don't get any yellow into my other colors. So I'm going to clean it off, wipe off my water, and then use my paper towels to make sure that my paintbrush is nice and dry because I don't want all this extra water in my paint. Next, I'm going to start painting my red. Same technique with the yellow, just nice and easy. Make sure to stay inside the circle. And try to keep the clumps to a minimum. All right, our last primary color is blue, but before we can do that, we need to clean off our paintbrush again. So I'm going to come in here, clean it off, make sure to wipe the edge to make sure to get rid of some of the water, and then use our paper towel to make sure that our paintbrush stays nice and dry. All right, next I'll come in with my blue. And finish that circle up. All right, then I'm going to want to clean off my paintbrush one last time before I move on to my secondary colors. For our secondary colors, we can create those by mixing our colors. And the first thing that we need to do before we mix our colors is to actually move some of our paint into our paint palette to mix with. So I'm going to use my palette knife and just scoop a small amount of paint from my paint cup into my palette. I don't need a ton of paint, so I'm not going to move a lot. Note how my palette knife is now dirty. I'll wipe off my palette knife on my paper towel to make sure that it's nice and clean, so that when I move some red over, it'll stay, I won't contaminate my red with my yellow. So now I'm going to migrate a little bit of red over from my paint cup into my palette. All right, and then wipe off my palette knife on my paper towel. All right, our first secondary color is orange, so now I'm going to take my palette knife and take a tiny bit of red and mix it into the yellow. We always want to mix into the lighter color because it's easier to make our color darker by adding more red than it is to make it lighter by adding more yellow. So I'm going to come in here with just a tiny bit of red and start mixing into my yellow. See how I've already gotten a nice yellow-orange? It's a little bit too yellow still, so I'm going to take a little bit more red, just a little dab, and then mix in some more. And that's much more of a nice yellow orange still. So I'm going to take just a teensy bit more red to get my color perfect. Yeah, that's a great orange right there. All right, now wipe off my palette knife. Make sure that it stays nice and clean. All right, and then I'm going to paint my orange into the area where it says to. All right, so I come in here with my orange. Okay, it's very important to keep your paintbrush clean in between each of these color switches, so that way you keep your paint nice and clean. All right, our next secondary color is green. So for that, I need more yellow. So I come back to my yellow cup, get a little bit more, scoop it over, clean off my palette knife, and then get some blue as well. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add blue to yellow. I'm going to take very, very little blue because I don't need very much of it at all, and start mixing it with my yellow. And you'll see how it's already becoming very green just from that little tiny dot of blue. It's a little bit too yellow-green right now. This would be a great yellow-green, but I want it a little bit more green-green. So I'm going to take my palette knife, get a little bit more blue, and mix it. And that is a much, much nicer green. All right, make sure to be wiping off your palette knife as you go, make sure it stays clean. We don't want that being contaminated. And be cleaning out your paintbrush in between each color as well so that your paint stays nice and clean. All right, now I'm going to take my green and put it into the second circle. And perfect. All right, now I'm going to clean off my paintbrush. All right, our last secondary color is purple. To get that, we need to mix red and blue. Since we already have red that wasn't contaminated since we used our palette knife, we can actually use this red that we already have instead of getting more. So I'm going to do the same thing. Since now red is the lighter of the two colors, I'm going to just take my blue with my palette knife and mix it into the red to create the purple. Once again, not quite purple enough. This would be a good red purple, but I want a little bit more purple, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. Still not quite where I want it to be, so I'm going to take a little bit more blue. And that looks pretty good. right, now I'm going to paint my purple. All right, awesome. All right, our final part of this assignment is we're going to be creating tertiary colors. Now, we don't need very much of these colors at all. I just want you to understand how to mix them. To make tertiary colors, you mix a primary color with a secondary color. Since we've already mixed our orange, purple, and green, how we're going to do this is we're just going to add some yellow, blue, and red into our palette, same way we did before by moving it over with our palette knife. So that way we have some color to work with. So I'm going to get a little bit more yellow, a little bit more red, and a little bit more blue. Making sure to wipe off my palette knife in between each one so that I keep my paint cups nice and clean for my next project. I don't want to contaminate my paint cups, because then my blue won't be blue anymore, and my yellow won't be yellow anymore. You need to make sure to wipe off your palette knife in between each time you go to get more paint out of each cup. All right, now to mix yellow-green, I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow to my green. And so I just take my yellow and just mix it with the green that I already have. And in fact, it might actually be easier, like I said earlier, to get our yellow-green if we take our green and actually mix it into the yellow. So we're going to do that instead. And you'll see how we get a nice yellow-green. All right, so now we have a nice yellow-green. See the difference between green and yellow-green? Okay, wipe off our palette knife and paint our area. All right, for yellow-orange, we're gonna need a little bit more yellow. So we're gonna come back and grab some more yellow with our palette knife. And then we're gonna add our orange that we already made to our yellow. To make a nice yellow-orange. And tertiary colors aren't drastically different colors. They're minor variations to allow you to paint the exact color that you want. And of course, you can get even more colors by mixing more yellow, more orange, more red. It's just a matter of the color that you truly are after during your paintings. Now for red-orange, we're just going to add some more of our orange into our red to get a darker, redder orange. So I take what we have left in our orange, add it to our red. See how that hardly changed our red at all? It would have been smarter to take our red and add it to our orange instead, because red is the darker of the two colors. So we're going to do that instead to get our red-orange. Yeah, and you can see that worked out much, much nicer to actually give us a different color. All right, for red purple, we're going to mix our purple with our red. Purple, since it's the darker of the two colors, will be the one mixed into. Going to take our purple. We can just add it to our red. Even though we mixed it with a little bit of orange, it's not that bad, so it should still be fine. And to get a nice red purple. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so now I've got my red purple. A lot of times this ends up looking kind of maroon, but that's okay. It's still red purple. All right, our last two are blue green and blue purple. So to get blue green, we're going to take the tiniest amount of blue and add it into the green we made at the beginning. So take a little bit of blue and add it to the green. With our palette knife. Now, if your paper towel is getting too contaminated itself, just go ahead and ball it or flip it over so you get a nice clean side. So that way you still got some clean areas to work on. So you're not contaminating your palette knife when you are cleaning your palette knife. All right, now I'm going to paint my blue-green. And you notice how I accidentally grabbed some of my red-purple over there unintentionally. I can add a little bit more green to kind of blend that out, and it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. This is why staying inside your circles is important, so that we don't contaminate our colors. All right, and then finally, we've got our blue-purple. For our blue-purple, we're going to mix our blue into our purple. So we're going to take a little bit of the blue that we still got remaining and add it to our purple. Needs a little bit more blue, so I'm just going to scoop out the last little bit of our blue from over there. Blue-purple tends to be very dark. Need even a little bit more blue to really see the change. There we go, that looks good. Adding little bits of color at a time is best. That way you can really judge if it's the exact color that you want before you put it on your paper. And it looks pretty much dark black, but it's a nice blue-purple. Now, since all of these colors aren't going to be able to be saved till the next class, if you were working on a big project and you wanted to save them, you can purchase from our classroom store some empty containers, and then you can mix more of the color in actual containers and put it with your palette. So don't forget that you can do that in case you're working on a big project and need more of that color, or you think you're going to use more of that color later. Mixing in the palettes is great for getting lots of different colors, but these aren't going to be able to really be saved till the next class. So make sure that you're mixing in your cups if you want to save it for the next class. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.